welcome back to another devlog. This is number 23. So on Monday, I was trying to get the loading screen to cover the entire um, multi-collection loading process. So last week, I was having trouble. I was trying to, in the code, I was trying to load each scene or each scene manager collection individually, and the ASM Advanced Scene Manager wasn't able to do that properly. It wasn't able to actually spread the loading screen across both open collection calls. It would just do the loading screen for the level and not for the main level object or scene that contained the actual character. So I like this new way of having multiple scenes for different hierarchy of objects, like the main game for a persistent game manager object across the whole game, and then main level for the character, so that the character is not necessarily tied to the scene, but he's still there, and then the scenes just have the scenes in them. So it's like this new approach of building a scene with multiple scenes that I'm kind of taking to heart. But anyways, so I was able to figure out how to do this by actually there's some API methods in ASM to actually not call load on the collection and load the one that was not marked automatically, um, but instead pick out which scenes from which collections and put them together in like an array, and then call those, and just those scenes would open. So that's what ended up being the solution. Um, so after that, after the loading was uh, done and the looking good, I moved on to building my custom loading screen. So I'll just demo that real quick here. So we'll play this. So I went back to my other package, my loading screen studio, and kind of bootstrap two or match two packages together that I bought. One was a lot of loading screen studio, one of these default ones, the futuristic, and the other I was able to get into the UI and configure it a little bit. So with story mode, here's the screen. So all this here is the loading screen studio. It says default images. It'll switch images around automatically. It'll switch titles automatically. You have your tile here. You can move everything around and custom to your like. So I just use an out-of-the-box solution that I can go in and customize later. Um, I replaced their spinner with another package, my own spinner, which is a lot better. I think I chose one of those, and I had to write code, so it goes to 100%, and then after a while it reverses itself, and then forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards. And then on top of this, everything else that would be in production, I kept the old prototype where it actually show from ASM. It'll show a progress bar for my own. This is only for debugging. It'll show the actual progress of all the loading screens. So it's loading level 1 scene 1, and it's also loading the main level with the character object. So level 1 scene 1, in the background it has its own process to load its neighbor, level 1 scene 2. Then it goes to 100%, and you can see my spinner is taking shape here. So happens relatively quick. You can see it kind of animates and then it just fades in perfectly. The character's in place and ready to go. So that's the whole process here. On Tuesday, after I finished the custom loading screen, I moved on to working on um, the next feature up for grabs is the actual death screen reloading functionality. So let's just say you're running along, and what happens when you die? You know, what's the process after that? So currently, when you die, it just pushes right to the credit screen. So the functionality, I had to sit down and do some planning about how it would actually behave, and essentially, I want it to kind of fade to black, but not the entire thing. I want the whole background to fade to black, but keep the character not faded, and then he'll do his death animation, and then I'll fade him out to black, and then the whole screen's black. And instead of an interface to say, do you want to continue or not, I figure if the player wanted to quit, they would go to the menu and then hit quit or exit the application. You don't really need to say, do you want to continue? So it's just going to assume you want to continue, and it's going to begin its kind of reloading process. And that's a whole separate other piece of functionality tied to the death process, right? So first I needed to kind of figure out how to do so I'll kind of do a demo here and walk you through each step of how I had to figure out how to do each thing. So we'll just start the demo here. Alright, so that was a bit of a pain to get it all set up and working again. For some reason I loaded a previous revision and everything was broken. The prefabs weren't saved correctly. I'm not sure what happened there, so I had to kind of go in and fix things to work again. But now I'm ready to demo. So I had to figure out the whole process of the death, the fade out, the fade in, and then kind of adapting my previous system to work in a different way. So previously, the next level would only load if you crossed a certain trigger, and that's fine. So it's like sequential loading. I had to adapt the system to where if you die anywhere, you know, it could mean that if you die in level 3, your previous checkpoint could be in level 1, but if you've moved along to level 3, level 1 could be unloaded. So the system has to be capable of handling. You have to pass it your checkpoint data, and it has to be able to actually load in the previous scene that might not be there. So you can't just put them there. So bit of complications, had to adapt the system. So first thing I tackled was I could do a death, but Invector likes to do a bunch of things behind the scenes and set a bunch of settings. So doing a death, and then but the trick is you have to be able to, so death state you can't move or anything, but I had to go in there and adapt the system to actually change the state from death to revive, so you're back to life pretty much. So essentially the only thing Invector had was that it would when you say bring him back to life, it would actually stand him back up with the animation out of the box. That's great. But I had to go in and kind of make sure that he's truly back to his normal state of being alive. So there's a few issues to sort out there. The next thing that I had to do was, let's see, I had to figure out how to do in vector camera state changes. So previously I've just been working with the same camera state, but you can actually tell the camera in vector to do certain things. When you say, hey, change to a different state, it'll change the actual field of view and anything else you want to change on command, which is nifty. But so creating a new camera state, it would give me a whole bunch of bad values. So I had to sort that out and actually to get it to work correctly. It was acting funny. But now if you go and let's just say you do a death, you can see the camera kind of zooms in. So now it's a different perspective. So I had this interesting effect. So I wanted to fade out, but not the whole, not everything, including the character. I wanted the background to fade out, and kind of he's left as a silhouette. That's great. And then eventually he would get faded out too. But in order to do that, I had to come up with a solution. There's several ways to do it, but what I came up with is another camera. So this main camera, not when in the current state, it's looking at everything, right? But as soon as you die, I want to kind of switch to this or incorporate this fade camera stack, enable this, and pretty much it's just culling the player, so it's only seeing the player. So when the death happens, it switches behind the scenes, and that allows me to fade everything else out and pretty much keep one of these canvases is for the main, and then there's another. So two canvases. So one fades with the canvas group, controlling the alpha in a script, and then after that, in a coroutine, the other one fades out. And it's controlled by multiple cameras in the where is it? Yeah, here, stack cameras. I got the fade camera as an overlay. So it's kind of a tricky business, but figuring out how to do that, you get sort of this effect here. After a while, predetermined amount of time, everything goes black. So this allows me to, from here, when everything's black, I can go start chopping up the scene, doing things behind the background. I had to figure out and do a lot of programming to adapt in order to. First, I tried to do it with the normal way, the lean way that I'd done before. When you cross a trigger, it would load right in the scene, the quick way. But that seemed too complicated. I said, I already have a solution, right, to, like, in my initial game initialization with the ASM. Why don't I just bootstrap the ASM to kind of wipe everything out, all the scenes out, and then load in from the persistent data, where your last save was, kind of like I do with the initialization process. That seems logical, right? So I tried to do it with ASM, but it just couldn't manage it. Like it would wipe all these scenes out, but it would have trouble loading the right scenes back in. Some were missing, some were not there. So eventually I kind of threw in the towel and went back and said, okay, let's take another crack at just using our in-game, our lean in-game loading to actually implement a system to load the scene where you were last saved in persistence, and also its neighbors. And also, when you do that, make sure you chain up the proper. There's an actual linked list of data that we need to chain up properly. So I had to make sure that all that, as a requirement, all that works together. But essentially, it will do just that. And what we have here, I have to start this over since I stopped it. So I have a test to say I'll start here, but I've already taken the liberty of um, making a persistent data. I've moved the character down all the way to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, all the way to the 4th scene, which is not available. It's saved in that position. So, and you can do this in reverse. You can start in 4 and just say the checkpoint was in 1 and it was not loaded. This is just in reverse. So we'll start this up, and what we'll have here, we will do we'll do a death. We'll just do it here. So he'll do his death thing, and we'll just let this process roll. There's the fade to black. Everything goes out. Okay, it's loading its thing. It's doing its thing here. So, okay, so that's what was happening. So I intentionally put in the code, I put a line of code to actually to wait. This is usually faster. I said, hey, when you're loading all these scenes, wait 20 seconds, and there's a 5-second. If the loading process is slow for whatever reason, you have a large scene or whatever, after 5 seconds, this will pop up and fade in, and you'll see, so at least you won't see black for a long time, and you won't think the screen is frozen. If it's under 5 seconds, it'll just continue, no problem, and then it fades out, and then everybody's placed, and then there we are. So now we're all the way in scene 3, which was not there before, and yeah, it looks, everything looks like it should. It loads only the required stuff, just like in the init process, but this is just a lean loading in game like you would with the triggers. So you're not using ASM. There's no real long there's no overhead of using that bulky system. It loads pretty quickly for these scenes, and it connects together properly, like the process would if you were just running through normally and then hitting the actual scene load triggers. So that's exactly what we wanted to happen, and it took some doing to make it happen. That was Thursday and Friday. After this was all done and looking good, I had a growing list of bugs that I wanted to tackle. So essentially, it's time for chores and cleanup. So this is a good place to kind of wipe out all the small bugs that I've seen over the past. Make sure that my foundation is solid up to scratch before proceeding on to other things. I have to get the thing solid before moving on. So I went back to my unit testing work, and I've understood a whole bunch of new concepts, like this multi-scene concept, where not everything has to be in one scene. You can have these dependencies in separate scenes, like one for global and one for like the character and one for different scenes. So they're not like interfering with each other when you want to load different components in and out. So it's like a componentized scene structure. And when I was looking at these old unit tests, they worked previously, but I've gone to this new system where I'm just having this single prefab, and then if I want to save another prefab, I'll duplicate it and make its own prefab while keeping this original. That way I'm not switching. I'm always using the same prefab and saving the current changes, but that way the references won't break everywhere. Especially, this system was built off, to get the newest one, but if I just have this main one and just save prefabs as checkpoints a long way and just keep this main one going, I think it's a better system. So I kind of in the end of the day, I kind of, with my new understanding, I figured I could make a better unit testing system. Plus, with the help of AI, so I was doing a bunch of testing and actually ironing out a bunch of things with a loading process that I really couldn't master before. In the end, I got all the tests working again in a much better system, a much better way. Um, with things I learned along the way of like, asynchronous loading and waits with coroutines and stuff. So it's looking a lot better and ready to start, testing, adding tests for testing the AI robot. I want to get tests around the detection process of that. Because one of the bugs in my bug list popped up. It was a random bug that I spotted, and I have to get that solid with unit testing in order to feel comfortable to move on. So I got a bunch of laundry to do, adding a bunch of unit tests to a bunch of features I developed since the last time I worked with this unit testing system. So doing all that, and once I'm comfortable, I got all the bugs out of the way, then I'll pursue the other things. But I think next week is mainly going to be solidifying what I've done so far with unit tests and fixing up anything that's broken that I've spotted along the way. That being said, that's all for this week. We will sign out now, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks. Goodbye.